Alf, how did we all get here? Ironically, you, my friend, are a big part of why I'm here and a lot of folks are here in the hobby. We're going to have fun with this one today. Stick around. What's going on, sports card hobby family? I hope that everybody is doing well. The hurricane has hit shore down in Florida. My dad actually lives in North Tampa. Our off-centered buddy is down there as well, Hambone. We did check in with him, and I think all parties are okay as it looks, and I think it's heading up through Orlando at this point, or it's still kind of making its way, hopefully losing steam as it does. I lived in Florida for a long time, decades, so I'm well aware of how this whole thing works. But what I've seen, there's damage and power's out and that sort of thing. But the reports that I've gotten back from my friends that are in the area is that still fairly minor stuff compared to, the house blowing down or being flooded out or whatever. So hopefully that is the story as more reports come out here today. So shout out to all of the hurricane victims down there in Florida. Hopefully it's not so bad. Big thanks to today's video sponsor, Pristine Auction. Can't remember if I showed this on the channel last week, but I did get the Back to the Future hoverboard in. I shared this on IG. And this is signed by Marty McFly, Doc, Biff, and Leah Thompson, who plays the mom. It's actually bigger than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I did get this in for Pristine. They've got not just pop culture cool stuff, but they've got sports memorabilia, signed helmets and signed jerseys, lots of sports cards. Tons of cool stuff. They've got weekly auctions, 10-minute auctions, all sorts of fun little things on Pristine. I do have $10 off your first auction win down in the video description. There's a code there. Take advantage of it. Many of the current hobby participants are in their late 30s, 40s, and 50s. And friends, that is not by accident. If we go back in time, and we're going to talk about, of course, the creative IP, the insane abundance of pop culture creative IP that came out of the 80s and 90s. But we're going to obviously first start with sports. And I think the main figure, when you look at the most collectible player in the hobby today, when you're looking at how many cards this person has across a wide range of dollar amounts, you can start at $1, probably start at 50 cents, $1 for his cards, going up into the millions. We've talked about this. Of course, it's Michael Jordan. And it's just such a legendary story when you look at his rise.
Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I led you to believe it was easy when it wasn't. Maybe I made you think my highlights started at the free throw line and not in the gym.
Kind of coming up when the NBA was struggling. They had Magic, they had Larry Bird that were kind of getting things going there in the early 80s, getting more and more people interested in the NBA. And then the Chicago Bulls drafted, of course, in '84, Michael Jordan, and the Bulls were, that was like a very low-level team, struggling team. There's actually a lot of stories about substance abuse from the guys on the team and stuff. Not great, going back to kind of the early, mid-'80s. And Jordan talking about how just a lot of the guys on the team just did not take it seriously, pro basketball seriously. Of course, he obviously did, even going back to a youngster. He was way ahead of his time, probably a lot more mature, and even at 21 than a lot of these guys there that were just having a good time. So Michael Jordan's rise was something that if you were there and you experienced it, it was something that even when you look at kind of the hype stuff of today, when you look at the Zions and you have the Wembys and all of these folks that are coming up today, the Lucas of the world, all of these guys have the benefit, or it's a blessing and the curse, I suppose, of social media. If you are somebody that's big coming out, you automatically have probably 1 million IG followers or more. You've got Twitter. You've got, people know you because you're coming up in sports. Michael Jordan didn't have social media. He just had to do it on sheer talent. Of course, there was some hype for him coming in, but it's just not even in the same galaxy as what we see today for a lot of these players. And to stay relevant and to stay hyped up during the 80s, you didn't have Twitter and you didn't have IG, you didn't have YouTube. You have like 4 news stations. To constantly stay on their radar all the time, you had to have extreme talent, which is exactly what he did. And he's the first. He wasn't the first great basketball player, but he was the first one that was heavily branded.
Sometimes I dream that here's me. Got to see that's how I dream to be.
Really got huge endorsement deals and that whole rise. The 80s and 90s, of course, was also a corporate machine and a lot more consumer spending on all of these things.
If I could be like Mike, I wanna be like Mike.
And so you had kind of a perfect storm of different things that were happening, and he came along at a perfect time to be able to take advantage, but really he earned it along the way. And he set the stage for all the players today that have a shoe deal, that have all these different, a variety of different endorsements. That is really thanks to Michael Jordan coming in and again, setting the stage, setting the groundwork, getting big contracts, getting big endorsement deals. And of course, guys like Kobe and LeBron and all these guys down the line have benefited from that. Also, a lot of guys my age that really appreciate the 80s, 90s baseball scene.
Pittsburgh and has reported to Bradenton. His idol was Willie Mays. He called him Uncle Willie. He's known baseball all his life.
Ever since Barry was about, I guess, 2 years old, he always had a baseball bat in his hand.
Baseball card collectors. Again, it's a period of time. And I think with baseball card collectors, it's probably kind of nice because every single period era, you have kind of its own appreciation for it. But the 80s and 90s, I can just remember a guy like Greg Maddux, who I really looked up to because he looked like he could just be your next door neighbor. He looked like a complete regular guy, just had complete control of the baseball when he was pitching, and and he's an all-time great, because of it.
Called strike throw.
Yeah, that pitch was absolutely nasty.
You had, of course, Glavine and Smoltz and those Braves pitchers, and then you had the power hitters, coming up, and of course, Ken Griffey Jr. is wildly popular today. Barry Bonds, and of course, the steroid era with Sammy Sosa. Even though it was the steroid era, and a lot of people look back at that time and they're like, "Oh man, that was so terrible. All those guys did it." There was some fun baseball to watch. The home run races each year when you were looking at these guys kind of as you hit into kind of the mid 90s through the end of the 90s into the early 2000s. It was really fun to watch. I mean, that was a very exciting time in baseball. So yes, you kind of have a little bit of a black eye with PEDs, that sort of a thing, but I would argue that it was worth it for baseball. Again, I know that a lot of people think, "Oh man, I wish that steroids never came into play with baseball or any of these major sports, whether it be football or basketball." It's not that we have to love PEDs, but man, I'll tell you, just watching, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, and Ken Griffey Jr. and all these guys that were just banging them out of the park, it was a lot of fun. So, 80s baseball, 90s baseball, sure, it's got a little bit of an asterisk, a little bit of a black eye for certain players and that sort of stuff. But man, that was a really fun time.
We're in your face with incredible inserts featuring superstars and hot rookies. There's one insert card in every pack. 94 Fleer Ultra Baseball, better than ever.
For baseball and for baseball card collectors. And while yes, that was obviously the heavy printing area, the junk wax era, the junk wax era of the time, there's still lots of great cards. And the benefit of it being a heavily printed era is you can literally buy complete sets, of this. I got this complete 89 hoop set, including the Jordan and the Robinson, all the good stuff. It was $40 or $50 with the binder, with the pages. It just showed up at my door and I get to enjoy it. A lot of the hobby nowadays, the new hobby and the new product sales, as we talk about quite a bit, it's all carnival games. It's wheel spins and it's make the basket and get a prize. It's like being at the fair, And again, there's fun to that. There's excitement to it. I don't want to take away from people that really enjoy it, but it's just such a different world. I do like that you have different product hits and different chases and that sort of thing, and it makes it interesting. And I get all of that. But I'm also just thankful that, I can go back to a more simple time where it was just, you're collecting certain players, buying cheap packs of cards, and just enjoying that piece of it too. Of course, we can't forget 80s, 90s football. 80s, 90s football was also amazing. One of the biggest things that I miss about 80s, 90s, especially as we got into the 90s, was John Madden and Pat Summerall calling games and those Thanksgiving games.
Ball's here. Boom, we cross him. Boom. Like they do in wrestling. Boom. Boom, right there. That's a wham block.
If you remember going back, you probably are with your family or friends or whatever over Thanksgiving time, and you would put on the football, it'd be the Lions or the Cowboys are playing on that day. And those guys, say what you will. I know everyone loves Tony Romo, and I'm sure they'll think Tom Brady's great at it too at some point. I don't think he's very good yet. But I would say a lot of the guys today, I really like Chris Collinsworth. I know some people are like, oh, I don't like him for whatever reason. Collinsworth calls a great game, and he knows his stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm just an old head when it comes to this, but I would much rather listen to Collinsworth than really any of the other. I think Troy Aikman and Joe Buck do a good job together. I think they've got good chemistry. I really like Collinsworth, but going back, John Madden and Pat Summerall were fantastic during these broadcasts. And maybe it was just speaking to me as a kid. I just liked the way that they called the game, and Madden with all of his noises and boom and pop, and as he called the game. Of course, he was a coach and a player, so he understands how the game works. But I really miss that today, and just kind of the great memories of watching football when they were calling games. But 80s, 90s football was great. 49ers, Cowboys, Packers, they were all battling out. Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders, Neon Deion, Bo Jackson, Bo knows. Man, what if Bo had a long career? That would have been incredible. But there's so many storylines there in the 80s and the 90s for football. And I really thought the product on the field just kept on getting better and better. Quarterbacks were getting better. Team strategy and all that sort of thing. It was starting to really kind of rise up. You were seeing a lot more TV deals. I think the DirecTV Sunday Ticket, when did it start? I think it was the mid 90s or late 90s. I definitely didn't have it as a kid. Actually, I don't think it was the mid 90s. I think it was maybe like late 90s, early 2000s when DirecTV came out with it, maybe 2000. I can't remember, but that was a game changer, obviously. 80s, 90s, it was like whatever's on your TV was what you were going to watch. And the card game back then was affordable and it was simple to understand. And I think that's where we get today. And again, I go back to the carnival game. Now it's all like, random teams. It reminds me of like the card game where like you have to guess, like move the card around. If you pick it right, then you win a prize. And then the first time they do it and they have like a winner over here that's like, oh, great job, John. It's like his buddy, that he's got setting up the whole thing. And then like the next time around, the ante goes up. Oh, this round's $100. You put in $100 and the guy goes nuts and makes it incredibly hard. That's all of the new sports betting culture that we have now, where everything is a gamble and a parlay. And again, great if you love that stuff. But for me, I also just like cards being cards. And that's just it's a whole different world that's now come into. It's just a part of society now. Betting is just now a very large part of the culture. And I think to be honest, I think it's horrible. I think it's absolutely horrible for the culture as a whole. I don't think it teaches young people anything good. I think it's clearly a vice. If it was something that had clear guidelines that could be done responsibly, then fine. But nowadays, it's not that way. Anybody can get out there and run some weird card game, some weird, random this or that or whatever. And you can win this, or you can win into this or that or whatever, this pull, this big, whatever. It's just, again, it's not sophisticated at all yet. Now, maybe this is kind of like a middle period where, a lot of the gambling products will start to evolve over time. I haven't seen that quite yet, but we'll see. I don't know if it's just going to be a casino forever, but maybe it will be. The good news for all of us is that there's 100 plus years of cards. There's all sorts of different options to participate in this hobby without all the stupidness. I think the other part too, to kind of differentiate, and something that I'm doing, is I can enjoy the greatness of a current player in Ohtani, Wembanyama. These guys can pop off, have great early careers, and I can enjoy it without buying one of their cards. I can enjoy those early victories and let's see what the guy does. Let's see what he looks like in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And to see how many cards does he have? How many different autos does he have? What's the situation? What is this individual player's card market checklist for this player look like? How's his career going? I don't need to pay top dollar up front right now. I can just wait and see. Maybe Wembanyama would be a guy that I'm collecting in 10 years. Maybe. Never say never. But I think that that's a big lesson that we just keep on having to learn over and over and over again with new draft prospects and new product coming out. Patience is so key. It's important to remember that this hobby is not a sprint, it is a marathon. So we don't need to be in some sort of a huge rush on a lot of these guys. Guess what? All these new players, all these new products, they're going to have a lot of cards in the future to pick from. There's going to be all sorts of different options for you. But right now, it's, when you have a new product, new player coming out, it's a foggy picture as to what that's going to look like. It's like it's the fog of war. And then as years and time goes on, it all becomes way, way more clear. Way, way more clear for the majority of cards. All right, friends, that's all I've got today. Let's not forget how we got here. Enjoy that nostalgia, that 80s, 90s, amazing time with all the IP and all the great sports figures that came out of it. And really enjoy the discovery of all the different collectibles, different sports cards, all the cool stuff around it. All right, friends, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.